Hi, I'm Emily Richards, and today we're going to be making a simple family-friendly meal that, in fact, the kids can actually make. It only has 5 ingredients, and one of our star ingredients is Canadian pork. One of my favorite cuts of pork are boneless pork loin chops. They're quick to cook, and they absorb the flavor you give them. They're also wonderful because they have lots of B vitamins that we need, like vitamin B12 and B6. And for protein, you cannot beat it. It's going to make a wonderful meal. So let's get going. These are my boneless pork loin chops, and they just need a simple bit of salt and pepper. 4 pork chops will easily feed a family of 4, and I love using them for other recipes like stir fries, or if I want to make pork skewers. They're fabulous. So I'm going to sprinkle them with a little bit of salt and pepper. They just need a light seasoning, and you can see around the edges, they do have that little bit of fat. They're a lean cut, so that little bit of fat will help keep them moist and add so much more flavor. We are going to season both sides. So I have a little bit of pepper that I'm putting on as well, just like that. And then we're going to flip them over and make sure we season the other side. There we are. Now we're going to season that other side with the rest of the salt and pepper. And I'm only using about half a teaspoon of each. There we go. Now these pork chops are Italian style. And what does that mean? It means that they have the influence of a little bit of breadcrumb coating that's seasoned with Italian flavors. You can look for dry seasoned breadcrumbs in the bakery section of the grocery store, and sometimes in an international aisle. And if you don't have your own seasoned breadcrumbs, you can just use dried breadcrumbs with a little bit of Italian seasoning, or simply add a little bit of dried oregano or basil. It will be fabulous. I have my dried seasoned breadcrumbs that I'm going to add into one shallow dish. And you can see I have 2 stations here. And that is because we're going to be breading these pork chops. So the first one I'm getting together is that breadcrumb coating, and I'm also using a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I love using Parmesan cheese as a seasoning in many different recipes, and here it is definitely a star. I'm going to mix that together, and we're going to want this to stick to our pork chops. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of canola oil in here as well. That's also going to help crisp up the pork chops because we're doing this in the oven. You can consider this a sheet pan dinner. There's my 2nd tablespoon going in. And then I'm just going to mix that together. Now, what's that first part of the breading? You may already know, you may have guessed it by the ingredient on my counter. It's an egg. I'm using 1 large Canadian egg, and that's going to help coat our pork chops with the breadcrumbs. There we go. Our breadcrumbs are nicely mixed. And I'm going to crack my egg and put it into the other shallow dish. So you'll notice that I have it in the order of the breading that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to start with the egg and then move on to the breadcrumb and cheese coating. So I'm just going to give this a nice little whisk with my fork here to break up the egg and mix together the yolk and the white. There we go. So next step, pretty easy. We're going to take our already seasoned pork chops and put them into our egg and then our breadcrumb coating. So I'm going to make sure I do one at a time so that I can coat them well. So this is a great opportunity to get the kids in the kitchen and help, whether it's with the seasoning or putting together of the recipe or actually making the recipe itself. So make sure that you put that coating on both sides of the pork chop. There we go. And then I already have my baking sheet with some parchment paper ready to go. And because this dish is so fast, I've already preheated my oven so that I know that when my pork chops are ready to go in the oven is ready for them. So I'm going to continue breading my pork chops so that they're ready for the oven. I just finished breading my last pork chop, and now they're ready to go into the oven. These are going to be so fast, by the time the dishes are gone, the pork chops will be ready. They only take about 10 minutes. I'll show you what they look like when they're done. Okay, so they're not done quite yet, but I wanted to tell you what we're going to be serving these delicious pork chops with. And if you were counting along and figuring out the ingredients, there may have been more than 5. Well, here's a little tip about 5-ingredient recipes. Salt, pepper, and oil are free ingredients, so they don't actually count. So if you go back, we have our delicious Canadian pork loin chops, our breadcrumbs, our cheese, and what else did we add? An egg, that's right. We used it in our breading. And here's our 5th ingredient, a lemon. We're gonna add that right at the end, just give it a nice little squeeze. It actually really brightens up and is a wonderful combination with the flavor of pork. So I'm going to just cut this into some wedges to serve up with our pork chops. Now this would be delicious with a salad, or if you wanted to serve it along with a favorite pasta or rice dish, you definitely could do that. Another favorite is roast potatoes. Now, how are we going to make sure that those pork chops are cooked properly? I have my instant read thermometer ready to go, and we're going to be looking for pork chops are 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and so that they are perfectly cooked and deliciously juicy. All right, let's get those pork chops out of the oven. It's been about 10 minutes. They smell amazing, and they have that beautiful golden brown breadcrumb coating on top. And I want to make sure that they reach that 160 degree Fahrenheit temperature. So I'm going to hold on to my baking sheet. Actually, let me hold on to a pork chop. And I'm going to check the temperature by putting in my instant read thermometer sideways so I can get into the center of the pork chop. And guess what? We are good to go. All right. So remember, I did cut up that lemon. We're going to serve our pork chops with a lemon wedge. Look at that. And they're so juicy. A little squeeze of lemon right over top. And dinner's done. It only takes about 10 minutes in the oven, and really it only took us about 10 minutes to put everything together. And if you have helpers in the kitchen, it'll go so much more quickly. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you check out this delicious 5-ingredient pork chop meal.